Welcome everybody. Welcome to this Staxxer slash Amazon webinar. My name is Alexander Tolem. I work as a EPR expert within Staxxer. And I'm here with Arthur from Amazon. Arthur, maybe you also want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi there everyone. My name is Arthur Heiting, working as an account manager at Amazon. Specifically focused on working with existing sellers that are wanting to start with FBA, so I help onboard them. And today, together with Alexander, we'll provide you some insights on EPR, and I'll be sharing some insights on what it exactly entails for Amazon, so sellers on Amazon, how you can make sure you're compliant, so you can continue selling without any blockers. So welcome on.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so before we start, a couple of ground rules. So it's going to be kind of an interactive sort of webinar. So there is room for questions. If you do have any questions, there are several ways of which you can ask them. There should be a purple button that says request live call in. You can do this to ask questions. You can do it with or without camera, whatever feels comfortable for you. But if you do call in, start with maybe a short introduction of who you are, where you're from, and which business you work for. There's also the option to ask questions in the chat. Between slides, I'm going to try to answer the questions. And also at the end of the webinar, there's going to be a little bit of room for questions. Just take into account the scope of the questions. The scope of this webinar is EPR and Amazon. So if you ask a question, ask yourself, is this something that's relevant for everyone here in this webinar? And if you do have a special case that you think that needs a little bit more time of attention, or that is not exactly EPR related, then also feel free to send me an email or call me. My contact details are on this slide and also at the end slide. All right. Any questions about this? If not, then I will be going to the next slide. Okay, so during this webinar, we're going to talk about a couple things. I'm going to give a short introduction to EPR. Then Arthur is going to talk about Amazon's role within EPR. Then I will take over and talk about the EPR regulations in the different countries. How do they work? What do you need to arrange? What is a dual system? What needs to be in the filing? We're going to look at the future a little bit. How is EPR shaped within Europe in the future? And then if we have some time left, I'm also going to answer some more questions. All right, so let's dive in. A brief introduction. What is EPR? So EPR stands for Extended Producer Responsibility. And it ensures that producers are responsible for the entire life cycle of their products, especially their disposal. So really the purpose of EPR is environmental protection through producer responsibility. So back in the day, before the world of EPR, before the concept of EPR, if you would send a product to Germany, then the German government would be responsible for the disposal and the waste, the recycling of the materials you bring into Germany. Right now, with the concept of EPR, you are the one that is responsible for the waste management of everything that you bring into a country, and at least financially. The purpose also is that it motivates you to innovate in an environmental friendly way and to use as less packaging as possible. So that's the why it's important from an environmental perspective, and also why it's important for you as a producer or as a seller. Avoiding fines and maintaining market access. Basically, if you don't comply to EPR in the different kind of countries, then you can get fines and you can get kicked out of the market by the government. All right. Let's see any questions about this. I do see a lot of chats, I think. Okay. Let's see. Will the sheets be shared? Yes, the sheets will be shared afterwards. Why are we not doing it in Dutch? Because there are also people watching that don't speak Dutch. Let's see if there's more. Okay. Then I will continue. So, Arthur, I'm going to give the word to you for the Amazon perspective.
Yes, thank you, Alexander. All right, so on to EPR and how it works on Amazon. So yeah, probably many of you or some of you are already selling on Amazon, not only Amazon.nl, but also selling EU-wide. So some of you have probably already seen it in your Seller Central account when expanding to an EU marketplace. You get certain notifications, you have to be compliant with different regulations, different marketplaces. So what do you have to do now to be able to continue selling seamlessly on Amazon? Well, how do you make sure that you're compliant? Let me give you an introduction how this works on Amazon specifically. Yeah, can you please go to the next slide, Alexander?
Yes, of course.
All right. Yes, there it is. So first of all, for some brief context, why EPR at Amazon? EPR legislation has been in place in most European countries since the 90s. So let's say for about 25 to 30 years. And simply put, if your products are subject to these requirements, you must be compliant in these countries. But however, at Amazon, you can be requested to prove your compliance of every country at any time. But for the time being now, Amazon is only obliged for you to prove, to collect your proof of compliance for certain countries. These three countries currently are Germany, France, and Spain. And how it works to be compliant at Amazon for these countries is a bit different. So for Germany, you have to request all your EPR numbers yourself and become compliant before you can start selling. Otherwise, there's simply no possibility to create active listings. And in France and Spain, it's a bit different, where you can do this yourself, or you can let Amazon on your behalf report and pay your contributions. So the difference, in short, between the German marketplace and the French and Spanish marketplaces, on the other hand, is that in Germany, you need to always upfront take care of EPR regulations and become compliant and prove this to Amazon before you start selling. And in France and Spain, you also have this possibility. However, if you do not, Amazon will report and pay these contributions on your behalf. So before I move on to how to become compliant Amazon and what happens if you're not, does anybody have any questions about this slide? I don't see any in the chat yet. All right, let me take a couple seconds. Can we then please move on to the next slide, Alexander?
Of course.
Okay, so in addition to a short context on compliance with Amazon, the important thing for you as a seller is, of course, how do you become compliant and what happens if you're not, and how can you double check this? First of all, to be able to continue selling, it's of course important that you are compliant and aware of all the consequences. So why is there only compliance necessary in these countries at Amazon?
Elise is calling in with a question.
Yes.
Elise, you're what?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Perfect. Sorry, I'm a bit puzzling with the setup. With regards to selling in different marketplaces, is the definition that you sell on that marketplace online, or is the definition that you have stock somewhere? I find it a bit confusing sometimes. Yeah, how that works, or if you, for example, have stock in Germany, sell on a French platform, and then ship to a customer in Germany, and vice versa.
Good question. I'm sure Alexander will go a bit deeper into this, but
Okay.
I believe there's different definitions of being a producer in the different countries. I believe there's three different definitions. The first one is, the first two are relevant for sellers that are already based in that marketplace and that are either the first reseller of the product, so offering as retail, or are the manufacturer of the product. But you can also be seen as a producer if you are the first one of a product introducing that product for retail into a certain marketplace. So, I think Alexander, he can give a quick nod. I believe I checked the slides earlier. He has a couple of example cases that he will share. And these will probably clarify this question even better.
Yeah,
Great.
I think I'm gonna focus on other countries a little bit more. If you still have the question after the webinar, Elise, then feel free to ask it again, and then we can see what we can answer.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
All right. Elise, one more thing. I think you have to press on a button to go out of the call again.
Okay, 1 second.
I had one webinar in which someone forgot to do it, so he was live the whole webinar.
Okay, no, let's not do that. Then I can easily drink my coffee more relaxed. Okay, we're recording. So where do I exit then? You can kick me out as well if it's more convenient.
Let's see if that works.
Because I just say web, camera, microphone.
Let me ask my host in the back office.
But just feel free to kick me out, and then you.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that's it.
Great. Yeah, Arthur, feel free to continue.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so next on to how to be compliant and why only compliance is necessary in these countries. Well, very simply put, so again, Germany, France, and Spain are the countries where Amazon is obliged to report your compliance. And that's just, a simple rule set by the authorities so far for our marketplace as Amazon. So there is no there's no other complex reasoning behind it. However, Amazon can at certain moments request to see your compliance for other countries. But currently these are the only mandatory ones in place so far. So some simple consequences are, if you are not compliant, well, as a seller, you must always take responsibility yourself. Amazon will educate you and alert you, but they must take your own responsibility to understand and comply with these laws, but also regulations that are applicable to the sale of your own products. This will, of course, increase your chance of succeeding on Amazon, but also help you avoid certain consequences. These consequences often include practices that could lead to potential penalties even, but more likely it's just will be blocked listings. And if for a longer time you're not compliant, it could lead to you to prevent from selling on Amazon and that your account will be temporarily closed. So how do you prove your compliance? I think this is the most important piece. You can prove your compliance in Seller Central. We have a compliance portal. And this compliance portal shows you what the mandatory countries are for compliance and gives you kind of checkboxes for which EPR numbers you will need for these countries. So by submitting your registration numbers and confirming you comply with the legal requirements in the compliance portals for these countries, you will be able to receive a check if you're compliant, and you can collect all the registration numbers in one place. So this is always a source of truth for you to be able to double check if you are compliant and that you will not face any blockers in the future. Just in short, if you have any doubts, what's the conclusion? What do you need to do to keep selling on Amazon, taking EPR into consideration? Just make sure that you comply with all the mandatory countries where Amazon is legally obliged to check this. So Germany, France, and Spain. How do you know if you're compliant? Always double check the compliance portal. And of course, for more detailed instructions in terms of compliance, and if you're unsure, Amazon has professional consultants to advise you on this, partners that we work with. An example, of course, now that we are here together as Staxxer, so we always refer for professional consultants, consulting advice to tax consultants. But in case of doubts, there are other help pages on Amazon that you can find. So we always refer to the Seller University tool and to the compliance tool. And by checking both of these, you can at least ensure that you have fulfilled your Amazon obligations in terms of EPR. If there's any questions about this piece before I move back to Alexander.
I think I saw a couple of questions in the chat, but I'm not sure they are Amazon related. So I can take over if that's okay, Arthur. So Wordstart asks, I'm also selling on Kaufland, for example, and they want me to have an EPR compliancy in Austria. Are the regulations per marketplace or per country? So the EPR regulations are per country, basically. So if you sell, for example, if you have one product that I will also dive into it a little bit more later per country. But the short answer is it's per country. Yeah. And then one more question from Yen. Am I obligated to have registrations in every country I sell to? That depends. It depends on the regulations the country in fact has. So to give you a short example, if you sell your products to Italy, for example, as a non-Italian seller, then you don't have to comply to any EPR regulations yet, because the EPR regulations in Italy are only for Italian sellers. So it really depends on the regulation and on the country. Okay. If there are not any more questions, then I will continue to the next slide. EPR in Germany. So I'm going to focus on 3 countries, France, Germany, and Spain, because I feel like those are, at least for Staxxer, the countries where we have the most traffic. So in Germany, the implementation of EPR consists of 3 regulations. Specifically, there's the Verpackungsgesetz, the Verpackg, the Elektro-G, and the BET-G. The Verpackg is, of course, for the packaging, the Electric for if your products are electronic, and the BET-G is if you sell something with batteries or only batteries. And depending on which product you sell, you must register separately for each of these categories. So the moment you enter the German market, you need to ask yourself, what am I selling exactly? So let me give you a couple examples. So imagine you sell sunglasses through Amazon in Germany. Then sunglasses, of course, they are not electric. They don't have any batteries, but they are probably being shipped in some kind of a box or sleeve. So those sleeves or boxes need to be accounted for under the Verpackg. Then the second example, if, for example, Carl sells cables in Germany through his own website that runs on, let's say, Shopify, then the cables are being shipped in probably some kind of boxes. So the Verpackg is applicable here. And also the electric, because the cables are electronic. And then you see the little symbol of the bin with the cross in front of it. I just want to add that it's really important that if you do fall under the Electro-G, that all the electronic products that you sell in Germany, they have to have that symbol on the product itself. If the product is too small, then you can also put it on the box or the package where you ship it in. But in principle, it should always be on the product. So take that into account. Okay, then the last example, imagine you sell universal remote controls with batteries. You do that business to business in Germany. Then all 3 the regulations in Germany are applicable. So PUBG, because it's being shipped in some kind of packaging, batteries because you ship it with batteries included, and Electro-G because the remote is, of course, electric. Now, it's important to realize here that a BET-G application, in principle, always comes with an Electro-G application, but not always the other way around, with the only exception being if you sell rechargeable or non-rechargeable batteries, and you're only selling that. Then you would only have BET-G and not the Electro-G. Okay, and then in terms of some more examples, before I go on, let me see if there are any questions. Can you manually add the Kaufland declaration to the declaration? I don't fully understand your question, so feel free to elaborate a little bit in the chat. Rico, what about an electric pump of a washing machine? So if you would sell an electric pump that will end up in a washing machine and you sell it business to business in Germany, then the Verpackg would be applicable. And I guess depending on whether the electric pump, it's already in the name, it's electric, so also the Electro-G would be applicable. Dennis, I'm just going to go on to the next slide, but feel free to re-ask your question with a little bit more explanation. Okay. So in terms of the accountability, or in other words, who is responsible, this can be a little bit complicated in Germany with the Verpackungsgesetz. But there are a few guidelines on how to decide who is responsible. So there is the environmental perspective. So in other words, you can ask yourself, is everything of the packaging being accounted for in the whole value chain? And there is the question like, who is the first to bring it to the German market? So the most basic example would be, imagine you're a Dutch distributor and you sell your products directly through your own website to a German end client. And you are the first person that distributes a product on the German market. So as you can see, you are responsible then. This would be a little bit, or the situation would be a little bit different when, for example, it's a German supplier that sells his products to a German seller, or a Dutch seller for that matter. And that seller adds a little bit of packaging. So in this case, the German supplier that sells his products to a German seller would be responsible because he's the first one to put it on the German market. However, the seller also adds some kind of packaging to the product. So the seller also has to do a filing for that kind of packaging that he adds to the product. And to give you a little example and also a connection to Amazon, Amazon FBA, of course, adds a bit of packaging to the products that you sell through Amazon. So that's why Amazon in Germany is responsible for that part of the boxes that they add to the product. And then in the last example, imagine there's a Belgian supplier that sells his products to a German reseller, and the German reseller sells it to the consumer. Then in this case, the Belgian supplier is the first one that puts it on the German market. But of course, the Belgian supplier doesn't know exactly what the German reseller is going to do with the product. They may not even sell it in Germany. If they do, though, the German reseller would be responsible. So long story short, as you can see, this can be a little bit tricky. And if there are situations in which you would like us to find out who exactly is responsible, then feel free to send us a message or get in touch with us. Okay, then there are a couple questions. When I only sell via my own webshop, who checks the registration obligations? Yeah, that's a good question. If you only sell through your own webshop, then as of right now, the ways that the German government audits you are very minimal. So it's only when you are registered that you can be audited. So yeah, the audits, if you only sell through your own webshop, are quite minimal. Then I see here, normally you can manually add the sold items and the associated packaging governance. If this is this possible with the Staxxer system? As of right now, this is not possible yet, but we are working on it. Okay. That was the answer to Dennis in the chat, by the way. Then let's go to the next slide. EPR in France. So EPR in France works a little bit different than in Germany. In France, there are not 3, but more than 10 different kind of EPR regulations. So to give you a couple examples, there are, of course, the categories we already know, the one for electrical equipment, the one for batteries, packaging, but they also have one for textile, clothing. There's one for furniture, household or professional, graphic papers. Think about manuals, gift cards, etc. One for tires, for toys, for garden do-it-yourself items, and for sports and leisure items. And depending on what which products you sell, you must register separately for each kind of these regulations. And because there are so many, this too can get a little bit tricky to decide. So I have a couple examples. Just let me check if there are any more questions, then feel free to call in or put them in the chat. If not, then I will continue. Okay, so imagine Gerard here sells an electric height adjustable desk to French customers. So the kind you can stand at and that you can electronically with a button change in size or height. So in this example in France, he would of course have packaging because of course the desk is probably going to be shipped in some kind of box. Then because it's an electric desk, also WEEE, or in France only the triple E is applicable. And the furniture regulation is applicable because it's furniture. So now Gerard has to register with all three of the eco organizations that regulate the waste management. And also within the declaration, Gerard has to be very careful now because the electoral component has to be weighted and categorized in the WEEE declaration. The furniture component, then so the rest has to be weighted and categorized into the eco organization of the furniture, and only the packaging should of course be in the packaging. Let's see. I see one more chat from Dennis. Normally you can manually add the sold items. Oh, sorry, no, that was C. Raymond, check. I already have everything set up with Amazon as for EPR. I'm looking for all-in-one solution for all my sales in the EU related to EPR. What can Staxxer add facilitate to comply with my obligations as a manufacturer who sells DTC in on Amazon, other marketplace, and my authorizations are recorded in Staxxer for VAT, OSS. So Raymond, as of right now, we can help you with the service component, and in the near future, we are building towards a system where we can also automate a big part of your administration for EPR. So yeah, long story short, the service component is all inclusive. We can definitely help you with that. So feel free to get in touch with us after this webinar. Dennis, please let me know if adding manually for Kaufland before January is possible. Otherwise, I can deal with Staxxer. Yeah, also for you, Dennis, get in touch with us and we will fix it. Okay, then if there are no more questions, I'm going to go to the next slide. EPR in Spain. So what regulations are there in Spain? Basically the same as in Germany. So the standard ones, the packaging, the WEEE and the BUT. So how do they work? In principle, they work very similar as the ones in Germany. There is, however, one important exception, and that is that the packaging law there is divided into three more categories. There is domestic, commercial, and industrial. To explain the difference, I think it's best to give like a short example. So imagine you are shipping a big box business to business full of iPhones, and there are smaller boxes, of course, with the iPhones in it. Then the smaller boxes that end up in the households at the end consumer are interpreted as domestic. The big box that is being shipped business to business is commercial. And note here that as of right now, commercial is not applicable yet, but starting 2025, also the commercial sales and packaging have to be accounted for in Spain. And the same goes for industrial. So what is industrial? Basically all the parts of the iPhone that are being shipped to, let's say, a business to business that end up as an integral part of the iPhone. So, for example, the screen or the chip, those have to be accounted for as industrial. So that is what is a little bit different from the situation in Germany. Then I see that there's one new chat message from Raymond. Secondly, for the A, do I need to register with another entity within Germany besides Lucid, FE, Gruner? Yes, you do, Raymond. And I have a slide on that. So if you still have the same question after that slide, the slide is about dual systems, then feel free to ask again, but I will answer it later. Can we receive the presentation after the webinar? Yes, Rick, you are receiving the presentation after the webinar. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about how it is in Spain. In Spain, there are basically two things you need to take care of before you can even request a Spanish EPR number. So in Spain, you need to get Spanish identification numbers. They have two different ones. The foreigner identification number, that is NIE, short for the Spanish version, not the English version. And there is the NIF, which is the tax identification number. So what is the difference? The NIE number, the foreign identification number, is a number you can get on a personal level if you are non-Spanish and if you want to take care of something in Spain, like, for example, buying a house, opening a bank account, those kind of things. Then the tax identification number is a number that you will get if you are either Spanish or if you are a company in Spain. So then the question remains, how many of those numbers do you need? Well, to start, you need one NIE number on your personal level to have to go on in the process and to request the NIF number. And then the NIF number depends on how many holding companies there are on top of the company from which you sell. So in the Netherlands, of course, it's pretty common to have a company and then a holding company on top of it, and maybe even one more. In Spain, that's not very common. So in Spain, if all those holding companies also need an NIF number. So that's the first thing that you need to take care of. And also that is something that we can help you with within Staxxer. And the second thing you need is an authorized representative. Unless you have a Spanish entity, you need an authorized representative there locally in Spain that speaks the language and that you need to give a power of attorney to take care of your business. It's mandatory. If you ask me, it's a little bit annoying because it only adds one link to the connection, and it complicates things a little bit, but it's mandatory, so you have to take care of it. Then I see there are a couple more chats, so let's see. Nadia, hi, is there any possibility for Staxxer to help out with applying for a Hungarian VAT number and file for Hungarian taxes as well? Nadia, I'm sure we can help you with that. Feel free to get in touch with us after the webinar, and then we can see what we can do for you. Do you need an NIE if you are a business as well? If I have one because I live there, but for a company, I imagine it's different because it would require to have an entity there per se. Yeah, so it depends on the situation. In principle, the NIE is only on a personal level. So if you also have a business that you want to operate with from Spain, then you need an NIF number. And then Dennis, EPR in Spain is very expensive. Is this correct? It can be quite expensive, yes, mainly because because of the authorized representative. So my experience with EPR until now in terms of pricing is that the moment an authorized representative is mandatory, it can double the price because the authorized representative is often very expensive. So it can be expensive. Yes, it doesn't have to be. I guess it also depends on the size of your operations. Are there any more? I see I've got a NIE in Spain. Do I still need an authorized representative in Spain? Yes, you do, unless you have a Spanish company or at least a subsidiary in Spain, an entity. Otherwise, you do need the authorized representative. Okay. If there are no more questions, then I will go to the next slide. So what do you need to arrange to be compliant? So of course there is the registration. The registration is per country and per category. So as I mentioned before, if you sell, for example, products if you sell sunglasses, let's say in France and in Germany, then in only France and Germany, you have to be compliant to the packaging laws. So register with the appropriate national authorities. For packaging Germany, it's Lucid. In packaging France, it's ADEME. And in packaging Spain, it's MITECO, which is short for the ministry there. And then after doing the registration, you get a number, and then actually comes the filing part. So after getting the registration, you need to do regular, consistent filings, so you can stay compliant. How many filings depends on the regulation and the country. It can be once every month. It can be once every year. It can be every 6 months, every 3 months. It really depends. But make sure you submit the filings on time to avoid fines. And then now comes the part about the dual systems that also a question was asked about. It can be that a country has a dual system and that there are 2 organizations where you need to register to. before I explain that, I see there are a couple more questions. How you get a Spanish? So Karima asks how you can get a Spanish representative. Through us, we can help you with that. So get in touch with us, and we will take care of it. That's the only question. Okay, so dual systems. So some EU countries like Germany, they operate with a dual system. So what is a dual system? Basically, it means that they separate the administrative part from the actual collection, sorting, and recycling of the packaging waste. So to give you an example, in Germany, when you want to be compliant with the FAPCI, you will need to register the administrative part. That does the government. The government itself does it through Lucid. It's the name of the register. But you also need to sign up to a so-called service provider or operator or take-back system or recycling organization. There are many different names that organizations such as Reclay can have. But so you need to register. The important thing to remember here is that you need to register and do your filing 2 times. 1 time at the take-back system, such as Reclay, and 1 time at Lucid. Mind you, only 1 time you have to pay. So when you, of course, the organization that does the actual collection, sorting, and recycling, that is actually putting in the work, as to say, that is the organization that you have to pay. And then the administrative part or organization, in this case, Lucid, is the organization where you then have to account for the filing and what you paid and etc. So why is this important? This is important, of course, because if you don't, you're not compliant and you can get fines. And how does it work? Well, it works that you just have to give the same kind of set of data to both organizations. If you want to know how it works more in detail, like step for step, then feel free to get in touch with us. And does it always work like this? No. For example, in France, it works different. They just have one organization that does everything. But for example, in Spain and in Germany, there is a dual system. Okay. Any questions about dual systems? Then feel free to call in or send a message in the chat. Okay. If there are no questions, then I will go on. Then what needs to be included in the filings? What kind of data? So it really depends on the EPR scheme and on the country. But basically it concerns the environmentally harmful materials that you ship into a country. And you do that in terms of kilograms or often in units of the material of a certain category. So in terms of the packaging law, you have to account for in terms of like how many kilogram paper or plastic or glass or aluminium or whatsoever. With batteries, you have to declare which kind of batteries, what's the voltage, how big are they, how strong are they, what's the impact on the environment. And with the electrical components, you have to account for what kind of electrical components. There are a couple of categories that you can check in the filing. For example, small appliances, I think lamps may be one of them. And there are a couple filings or a couple categories that you have to check. And then where do you have to do this filing? It varies by country. For the electrogy, it's different in Germany. For the there are eco organizations like Citeo or ProCircular. Those are also called the take-back systems, as I said before. Then there's Lucid, that's the governmental register in Germany. And Reclay, that's the take-back system, or in other words, the eco organization in Germany. Okay, I see there's one new question. Is this, Raymond, is this something you will support down the line, as in filing with Lucid and Groene? Yes, we can help you with the registration and also with the filing. Yeah, just send us an email with your situation and we will help you. Okay, any more questions? All right, then I am gonna continue. So a small and quick look towards the future, because the world of the packaging law in Europe is going to change a little bit. As of right now, you have to register in all separate countries, and they all have their same systems, their own organizations, and if the size of your operation is relatively big, it can become quite messy. That is all going to change with the packaging and packaging waste regulation, short for PPWR. In Europe, it's a new packaging regulation that the European Commission wants to introduce. They want to do this to get more transparency, the same set of rules for everyone. And also they, of course, want to do it to ensure that all packaging is recyclable by 2030. And to become more environmentally friendly. So when is this going to take place? I think out of my head, it's right now still at the European Commission, and it will take a little bit of time to be implemented afterwards. But I expect somewhere between 2025 and 2030, this will take into effect. What are the key consequences? So, like I said, the same set of rules, a level playing field and efficient functioning of the internal EU market for packaging. Another consequence is reducing the amount of packaging and packaging waste, encouraging the reuse and refill of packaging. Also, an important thing to note is that authorized representatives are always going to be required. And like I said before, they want to ensure that all packaging is recyclable by 2030. In other words, a full-blown ban of non-recyclable packaging. So that's the PPWR. Because it's a relatively new regulation, it's also not implemented yet. I don't know everything about it. If there are any questions, then I will do my best to answer. So Rico asked, what if I sell electrical components? Well, Rico, it really depends on where you sell them to or in what country you sell them. But in most countries, you will have to comply to some kind of electrical EPR regulation. Elise, so much for €1. Okay, yeah, I agree. It is a bit much. Then Yen, can you give me a ballpark cost for registration and filing packaging and WEEE in Germany? And can you also support with this in Poland? We can also support this with in Poland. So the answer to that is yes. And a ballpark cost for registration and filing. Send us an email with your situation, and then we can, of course, tell you a ballpark of how what it's gonna cost. Okay. Oh. So yeah. Any more questions? No? Okay. Then I guess we have reached the end of the webinar.